Hey there, everyone, and welcome to our second episode of Unstrung Archery. I'm Nye O'Neill of Morecambe Bay Archers, one of the two co-hosts, alongside my good friend Neil Hickman of Wigan and Oral Archers.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be continuing from last week, getting to know both Neil and myself as archers and blokes, as well as and get into more of what we're going to talk about for the rest of the series. So Neil, we talked last time. You've been in archery for about 3 years or so. So would you mind telling me a bit more about what it was that initially got you interested in archery?
Well, honestly, it was lockdown. Well, I say lockdown. Lockdown kind of forced me into archery. So I think just before lockdown, I think the August of 2019, I was on holiday and my daughter was like, "I want to go try that." And looked over in the corner. There was a nice little range set up on there's an indoor range set up on a roller skating rink of all things. As they do on holiday. So we had a go. Turns out I was actually relatively good. Granted, it was somewhat low poundage jelly bowl, shall we say? But it was enough to bite. The bug well and truly bit me at that point. So I did a bit of research. And just as I was about to go and do a beginner's course, they decided to lock down. So, I was sat at home watching all sorts of videos on archery and stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. Absolutely punishing myself because, I really wanted to get out there and do this sport. And, it became, after the first lockdown lifted, it was a great opportunity to get out there and, be outdoors again around people. Granted, it was, socially distanced, but it was definitely something that I needed to do. I've always enjoyed watching archery. Archery was one of those on the Olympics for me that I'd sit and watch, not really sitting there thinking I'm going to do that one day. But I definitely took an interest in watching it at that point as well. So I've watched it for years on TV, watching the Olympics and whatnot. I do recall, it's a very distant memory, but when I was a lot younger in Scouts, I remember doing archery back then. And I think that may have been the starting point in the back of my mind that, when I picked up that bow again, 15, 20 years later, that, this was something that I definitely wanted to do.
Yeah, it's always interesting that everyone seems to have those memories, like yourself with Scouts, yourself with holiday camps. So everyone, and I see a lot of people and talk to them about how they started out, a lot of people seem to have that one moment that they remember from being as a kid. And so, how was it for you starting during lockdown? After lockdown? Was it obviously social distancing was still a thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the beginner's course that we did was, very, very basic in what the coaches were allowed to do. Obviously, they couldn't come anywhere near us to kind of like adjust us and whatnot. So, in that terms of things, I suffered a little bit, but I had a very good coach. So, it was, we got through the course relatively quickly. I actually did it over a weekend down in Kent with in-range archery. We basically had a 2-day course essentially that was kind of like rammed in a lot of information in a very short period of time. But we got through the whole of the beginners course, and that was difficult, I would say. Because it was such an intensive course. It's not something that we would generally do as a club now. But it got me through the course and gave me enough information to then go come back here and find an actual club. Now, when we got back to the club, obviously I found Wigan and Oral Archers as my local club. I went down there. Obviously, I told them I'd already done a beginner's course, so it was just a case of going and shooting. That was, again, a difficult thing because, I'd come back from this very intensive course, had all this knowledge in my head, but not particularly knew how to use said knowledge. And again, coaching wasn't a thing that was generally done at that point because, we couldn't get stuck in. We had to maintain our distance still. And obviously, I think I personally picked up quite a few bad habits, not being able to have that close coaching. But, we muscled through it. And, eventually, when lockdowns were fully lifted and social distances was not really a thing anymore, we did come back and do some development work as well. So I think that was very important to me in my career. It was to, get back to having a coach. And I think a lot of people, if they're left without that kind of goals to be set or there's some sort of direction, this is where people tend to fizzle out in archery as well. So it is definitely a lifetime learning kind of sport.
Oh, I definitely agree there. I'm still learning. 20 odd years later, I'm still in the learning process and enjoying soaking up new knowledge by getting to talk to new people. So obviously you've said about picking up a lot of things early doors. And what sort of moments really stand out for you from your archery career? What do you really remember?
Well, it's not difficult to particularly remember these. I've not been shooting anywhere near as long as you have now. So a lot of my memories from archery have genuinely come within the last couple of years. So they're still quite prominent in my mind. I would have to say the most memorable moment I've had with archery is when I first got back to having a one-to-one coach. Now, our coach at the club, there's unfortunately only one of him. He's our only level 2 coach in the club, and he's spread very thin. So having time with him, is few and far between. But I do remember this one session that I had with him, and it was when I was shooting recurve. I'm a compound shooter now. But back when I was shooting recurve, and I had obviously all this knowledge in my head from the beginner's course, I've been shooting probably for about a year, let's say about the year mark. And my coach decided that it'd be a very good idea to get me to take my finger sling off my bow because I had a tendency to grab the bow and drop my arm. So his idea was that he was going to take the finger sling off and make me drop my 500-pound bow on the floor. Well, that's what he led me to believe, at least, anyway. However, after a couple of shots of me stopping grabbing the bow, eventually the bow did come out of my hand and fell into his hand. I was that concerned about the bow dropping off the floor that, I didn't think he was going to put his hand up and catch it. So my mind just wasn't thinking of that. But it was at that moment when it fell out of my hand and landed in his that something clicked within the back of my mind. I can't explain it, really. It was just every shot from then on, I didn't grab. And I think that was the point where my scores improved quite drastically. My understanding of how the mechanics of a bow worked improved drastically. So I have to say that is a pivotal point for me in my archery career. Between that and switching to compound and just having an understanding of how the mechanics of two completely different bow styles work.
And obviously there you mentioned the shift from recurve to compound. What was it, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that tempted you to try the compound bow?
Well, it was getting to the point with my recurve career that I wasn't getting the scores that I was expecting I should have been, and what my coach said that I should have been. And I'm not particularly a small guy. I'm a big built lad, and there's a lot of body parts getting in the way of the string, shall we say? So I couldn't personally find a technique that would be fitting of the way that I shoot. So I think after about 6 months of struggling with different techniques, I even got to one point where I was doing a very old-fashioned technique that they used to teach about 30 years ago, which one of our other coaches at the club suggested that I give a try. It's a very unorthodox style now, but essentially you would stand with an open stance, but rather than standing up straight, you would slightly lean into the bow. So the majority of your weight was on your toes, and it would open up the alignment of the chest. The only problem with this, whilst I was hitting in the center of the target, and my scores were great, they only lasted for, I'd say, 3 or 4 ends until I got to the point where I was feeling like I was going to fall forward flat on my face. So it wasn't a technique that I was particularly thinking it. I think I got that frustrated with it that I thought, you know what, the string angle is not going to be an issue on a compound. Let me just try it. And our level 2 came over with one of his many compound bows that he's got to hand and had to be a Hoyt Alpha Max, which was a very nice little bow. And that stuck with me for a couple of months. And that first shot of that compound bow completely changed my mind about archery. I was getting to. I will admit, I was getting to the point where I was getting a bit disappointed with the way that archery was going for me, and that switch to compound just reignited that spark of what I originally felt when I first picked up a bow. Yes, it's the dark side, shall we say? I know compounders get a lot of grief from other bow styles that it's cheating or something like that, and yes, it's a lot more accurate of a bow. But again, it leads you to believe that that kind of accuracy doesn't just come from the bow itself. Yes, it's a very accurate bow, but you've got to be just as accurate with it as well. So I kind of like that challenge that Compound presented. That yes, while it is a more accurate bow, you have to personally be just as accurate. Otherwise, you will drop scores. You're not going to perform as good as you could do with, say, a recurve bow. You have to be a lot more strict with a compound bow for that reason. And that, to me, I think it presented a greater challenge for me. And yes, all right, I'm not the best archer in the world. I've still got a lot to learn and a long way to go, and I am slowly getting there. But I think switching to compound was probably one of the best things I've done in my archery career, at least.
It's a good, you say about the dark side and everything. I always say to people, as long as you find a style that suits you and you enjoy your shooting, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And like you say with the compound expecting higher scores, you look at the recurve, say the top, you hit say 570 Portsmouth on the recurve, you'd be thinking, oh, that person will be in contention for a medal. You look at 570 on a Portsmouth, it's middle of the table. So whilst the scores are higher, the competition is also much higher as well. So it's one where as long as you're enjoying your challenge that you're undertaking with your bow, that's the main thing. And so I suppose my next question, Neil, would be to ask. Obviously, you mentioned you've taken it on. How has it impacted your lifestyle? Would you suggest over the time?
Well, this one's a big one for me. I like to call it neurospicy, but essentially I have ADHD. I have all my life. I've only recently found out that I had ADHD, and I think archery itself has helped a hell of a lot in terms of being able to focus. Just being on that line in the moment and only focusing on that one arrow at a time, it teaches your brain to be able to just focus on the one task that you have ahead of you. So as a lifestyle, it's got me out of the house. I was very much a hermit at one point, especially after lockdown. We're obviously not getting out that much. But even beforehand, I was very much quite happy being at home. Whereas archery now has dragged me out the house, possibly kicking and screaming, yes. But I go to the club and I see those faces that I recognise and I get on with, and it puts a smile back on my face. So it's great. The social aspects of archery are fantastic, and I find myself sometimes going to sessions because we unfortunately we don't have a range that's 24/7 like yourselves. You'd understand that. There are a lot of clubs out there that are, as they're in a similar situation to us. They don't have a 24/7 range. Some clubs are lucky that they have that kind of thing, but we don't. So going to a session, and I've found sometimes that I don't even shoot. I just stand around talking to people, and that's okay because that's what archery is all about. Is that community of people that have a similar passion to yourselves. It's fantastic, and I would quite happily say that archery did change my whole outlook on life, especially going from somebody who was completely stuck in the house for the most part to not even wanting to go out and let alone do a sport of all things. I used to play rugby when I was younger. I can't remember how long that lasted for. I can't remember that far back. But the one thing I will say about archery is I love the fact that I'm able to go out. I mean, indoor season, yeah, not everybody loves indoor season. I'm one of those people. I don't particularly enjoy indoor season. But the fact that I'm still around those people that, have become basically my second family, that is the one thing that I will take away from archery for the rest of my life. That it is something that includes absolutely everybody. Archery doesn't care who you are, where you come from, that kind of thing. It does not care. All that archery is about is that community, and not many sports can say
I
that.
definitely agree there. Agree there, mate. And first thing I need to do is I need to apologise because I laughed partway through there when you said about being dragged out of the house kicking and screaming. I laughed purely because I've been there myself many a time as well. But and also I wanted to say thank you for opening up about ADHD and how it's helped you in staying present in the moment. I should also put on record now at this point that if you come across dyspraxia before, so I'm dyspraxic as well. So I'm for those of you who haven't come across it, it means I'm a clumsy bugger. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the podcast, but yeah.
Yes.
But I'm also just really glad to hear, mate, that it's had such a positive impact for you, and it's that.
Yeah, exactly. We are actually thinking of covering neurodivergent conditions in one of the future episodes as well. So, dyspraxia comes under an ND condition. So that's something that I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk about in future episodes.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll make that one happen as well. And but archery, literally, like you say as well, is a sport for. It's one where it's a sport for everyone as well. So I remember when I first joined it, there was a gentleman at my archery club, Harry, who was he was blind, and then he used to shoot with a tactile sight about 20 years ago, and yeah, he was someone. So when I now come across people when I'm coaching them, they might have some form of visual impairment, maybe not necessarily. So they might have something like might have vision in one eye that's slightly not too great or something. They come to be a bit concerned. Look, I've got this problem with my vision, so I'm worried I might not see the target. Oh, don't worry about it. I used to shoot with a blind guy, and he sort of he was there. It was just it wasn't special. It was just another member of the club who was a great guy and a great role model to me as a kid as well, and someone who everyone's welcome on the archery line as well, regardless of whatever your background is. Everyone's welcome. And so obviously you've said about how it's had such a positive impact on your life and your situation. And I was just wondering what other lessons from what you've learned you think would be the important ones to pass on to people going forwards.
The I would say the thing that I would say to anybody that's starting out in archery would be try not to worry too much about what's happening everywhere else. You know, yes, all right, can be a competitive sport, but what I would say to anybody that's just starting is work on improving yourself first rather than trying to improve your score. If you're focusing predominantly on hitting that gold every single time, your archery career will be very frustrating. I think the main point to take away is if you can work on yourself and getting yourself better and getting yourself more consistent, those arrows will eventually find the way to the gold once you understand how your body works and being able to become a consistent archer. Everybody rushes to get the distance, everybody rushes to get the gold, everybody rushes to be the best archer. It doesn't always work out like that. I've spent the majority of my archery career, fiddling around with the bows. I like to tinker a lot. And one problem I had pretty much with every single bow style that I've shot is there's always, or what I've always felt is something wrong with the bow. And 9 times out of 10, it was never the bow that was the problem. It was always me. So I was too busy blaming the bow when I could have just taken a step back and said, right, okay, what is it that I am doing that I can improve? To work on yourself, and then the scores will come. I would quite happily suggest to anybody going on a beginner's course, don't even put a target face on. Shoot at a blank boss. Give yourself that time to understand how groups work. Give yourself time to understand how you can move your group around the target, regardless of where you're aiming at. So if you want to go for a different point on the thing, you have that control to do that. And then when you understand that, you can aim that bow smack bang in the middle of that target. Unless you're a bare bow archer, of course. Don't follow that cloud though, because the clouds move.
Yeah.
But if you can focus on the same spot every single time, and you'll be able to hit that spot every single time. That is the goal that you're going for. So don't worry about hitting that gold first. Worry about getting yourself into the gold, and then you can hit the gold yourself.
Yeah, wise words there. I'd echo that. Learn to take the time to understand your shot cycle, the shot cycle that works for you, and your equipment as well. I remember a conversation I was having, I don't remember whether it was just before COVID or just after COVID, with a lad who's been Cumbria County champion many a time, and he said that the way to get your scores to increase wasn't by hitting more tens, it was having less misses or less wayward arrows. So the way I work it with my beginners is, say 3 arrows, you hit 2 tens, you'd expect to win. If that third arrow is a miss, 20 points. 3 arrows in the outer red, 21 points. Pull the points ahead of someone. If I minimise it, understanding what you do allows you to tighten those groups up. And so that's good, really good advice there, Neil. And so I suppose next I want to be interested to know is what your plans are going forward in archery. What goals you're setting yourself, what you're hoping to achieve, sort of short term and longer term.
Well, for those people that know me, will know that I'm very ambitious when it comes to anything that I get involved in. Recently become a session coach. And obviously, I am the secretary of Wigan and Laurel Archers as well. I tend to take a lot on. Maybe it's my ADHD, I don't know. But a lot of people say, chill out a minute. And now we started a podcast. So, short-term goals are, I want to involve the community more in archery. I think grassroots needs to be looked after a lot more. the main thing for me is getting more people into archery. There is an announcement potentially coming up soon, which I'm not going to say too much about yet. But there is something bigger coming on for me for my archery career at least, which will allow me to get people more involved in archery. So stay tuned to a future episode for that. I will be making that announcement very soon, I will hope. Just a couple of things that are being let's just say there's some tape that needs to be cut before we can announce that one. But again, long-term goals is pretty much this is pretty much the same. I want people to be on that shooting line. Obviously, I'm a judge as well. I have been for over a year now. I'm still at the lowest level of judging, so I'm still relatively new to judging. So my goal, I hope to possibly get to national level. Who knows? I don't think I want to go beyond that. The national is quite high for me. As much as I would love to go and do the World Archery or even the Olympics, I don't think I'm that ambitious. Somehow, I want to stay on home soil when it comes to archery, and I'm not a big fan of traveling that far. So I think staying within the UK for judging is probably going to be as far as I go. But again, it all comes down to the same thing. I want to get people into archery. I want to get people into those competitions and support our tournament organisers, support the support, and let's make our sport more public, get it the attention it deserves, because that's the one thing. It's not football, it's not rugby, it's probably very, very unlikely that it's ever going to get any mainstream kind of coverage on it. So while it hasn't got that, let's get it out there, let's get people knowing about it, and that is my long-term goal.
And I'm looking forward to being part of it through these podcasts as well, mate. And I'm looking forward to the big announcement when it comes as well. And yeah, I really like those ambitions. Like you say, it'll be good for us to get archery more well known, and hopefully between us we'll all have different things that work for us at different bits. So hopefully maybe through the forum of this podcast we can all start sharing different things that have worked for us individually that we can take away from each other as well going forwards. Thank you, Neil, for your insights in today and sharing your experiences with us. It's been a privilege to share it with you today. And so I'd like to thank you. I'd like to wrap up this section of the podcast before I hand back over to yourself to do the final roundups. And just, again, thank you again for talking to us on this latest episode of Unstrung Archery.
No problem. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the section of our show where we pick out some upcoming tournament that we would quite happily recommend to anybody, actually. So, Nye, let's start with you this time. What have you got for us this week?
So the one I've got lined up for us this week is on the 9th of September, the weekend before the NBA's Friendly American on the 17th of September. Bit of shameless self-promotion thrown in there, just for good measure. And this one is...
Shameless.
This is Eagle Bowman of Penrith. They're having their autumn nip shoot, which is a UK record status Windsor shoot. So 9 dozen arrows in total, shooting 3 dozen at 60 yards, 3 dozen at 50 yards, 3 dozen at 40 yards. So it'd be a really good way to get into the record status shoots. So it's not got the distances of your Yorks or your York Herefords or your Feeta rounds, your WA rounds. Sorry, I'm still working on calling them Feeta. Your long distance rounds there. So it'd be a good way to get a first record status shoot under your belt as well. Really friendly bunch that I've had the fortune of spending a lot of time shooting with over the years as well. So Eagle Bowman's autumn nip on the 9th of September would be my recommendation. I believe, Neil, you've got a good shoot as well that you'd like to recommend for us on that same weekend.
Yes, it's a good weekend for archery. For those of you over in Lancashire, or those that are willing to travel, Lancashire Archery Association has got their 36 WA 1440 Star Open Tournament. This one is a world record status. So normally on this show, we're going to be talking a lot about novice grassroots kind of level archery, but we will not forget those more experienced archers that do need to get out there and get their scores in as well. So the world record status 1440 is being held at Bowman of Pendle and Salisbury. This is on the 10th of September. Again, it's a fantastic round. It's a long one. Don't get me wrong. It is a long competition. It is a 1440 after all. But it does give a refreshing change from this. We've seen a lot of 720s coming, especially double 720s. And the problem with the 720 is all at one distance. So you kind of feel a bit stagnant when you come to that kind of round. The 1440 is basically the same amount of arrows, but at 4 different distances. And it gives you that bit more kind of a change when it comes to shooting. It's not all stagnant. Don't get me wrong, the 720 is a fantastic round, but if you're looking for something different, again, it is an open tournament. So even if you are a novice and you want to get along there, just get yourself stuck in. It's a great round. It is a long one, as I said. So prepare yourself for a day of archery, and it does take all day. But you are looked after by the judges again.
Yeah, and it definitely a day worth attending, I'd suggest. So we've got we've got Penrith and we have Pendle and Salisbury, 2 really good clubs, both offering 2 shoots that would be well worth archers attending. So archers in Lancashire, Cumbria, Cheshire, Yorkshire, Durham, Northumbria, across the north, or anywhere across Britain for that matter, come along to these 2 fantastic shoots on the weekend. Yeah, on that weekend, 9th and 10th of September. Or if you're feeling adventurous, why not visit both?
Exactly. That's what it's all about. Get out there, shoot both. You should be waking up Monday morning knowing that you've shot tournaments. That's how you should be getting out there.
And just think, every tournament you attend, it's a story to tell people.
Exactly. So, moving on to our retrospective time. So, this is the part of the show where we look back on any tournaments that we have attended. Now, I was going to talk about the Lancashire Championships, but I didn't actually shoot that. I was judging it, so we'll leave that one to a future episode. But Nye is going to tell us about a tournament that he's recently attended. So, hand that on over to you, Nye.
So, my tournament was the week after the Asherton Novice Shoot, where everything had basically fallen flat on its face for me shooting. My arrow rest was gone, and I had the worst shoot I've had in ages. And I shot a personal worst in competition. Fortunately, Neil and everyone there were really good, rallied round and said, "Come on, Nye, built me up." Decided, I'm going to go down to Bebington Archers to shoot their Western round. So, changed me arrow rest, and went with my mate Judith as well, who's really good friend of mine and a sparring partner. And we went down there to Cheshire for the shoots, and we had a brilliant day. The guys I've got a few good friends down there, and the guys who were there really looked after everyone and put on a fantastic shoot. Had really nice warm weather, and ended up without realising it, ended up coming away with a PB, which was a very nice welcome surprise for me. And one thing I discovered that Cheshire do with these they do badges for the rounds as well. So I think it's things like the Cheshire Wheat Sheaf or the Cheshire Cat, and it's basically little things that you can get, or I say little things, badges that you can work towards for your performance in a competition, and it gives people something else to shoot for alongside alongside the big things like your feet stars and things, your WA stars. Gives you other things to work for if you're not, say, comfortable to shoot or not capable of shoot at the moment of shooting scores of that level. It's just other things that you can work towards. I know North Wales do something similar with the Dragon badges indoors. So I was really glad to come away from that one with a red wheat sheaf badge, which I'm proud to add to my admittedly quite small collection of badges. But yeah, so that would be my tournament roundup for this time.
Hey, thank you very much for that, Nye. So that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you very much again for tuning in to this episode of Unstrung Archery. Again, I need to stay connected for our future episodes. The next episode that we have planned is focusing on the barebow revolution. Now, the last couple of years, barebow's kind of been in the back on its back foot. It was kind of coupled in with recurve for a long time. It wasn't really specifically seen as a class of its own. There's a couple of people that have been dominating, shall we say, and making the case for barebow to become its own division, which they were very successful in doing so. I think last year was the first time it was seen at national level and had its own national tour. So hopefully next time we're going to have a guest on with us. I will not say who that guest is yet because I have yet to confirm whether they're actually available to come and talk to us. So we will be focusing on barebow next time. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we shall see you next time. Thank you very much for tuning in. That's all from me, and see you all later.
See you later, guys.